Hello and welcome back to A Goblin's Lair. We're back. We're at it with a surprise stream today. Surprise, everybody! We're here! You didn't know, I didn't know, we didn't know, nobody knew. But now it is, and we have to accept it. And we need to move on with life, and sometimes things happen and you don't know that they're coming. And surprise, they're here. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it while it happens. I am here with Jojo today, as known on Twitter at
Hello.
least. And we met over on Spontaneum, which was a ton of fun. If you saw the Spontaneum episode, definitely, well, if you didn't see it, go watch it. If you did see it, go watch it again. I got to play as Murphy, and we had basically Team Bard, which was hella fun.
I'm
And
always down for a team bard.
Team Bard, right? Because, well, okay, so the two girls made bards. I went full bard. You went bard paladin?
I went almost, 16. We were level 20. Let's just
Yeah.
get the way quickly.
Yes.
16 levels paladin and I think 4 levels bard.
Mm-mm. I got a kick out of casting right at the end because I dropped a plant growth. It's like an 8-hour plant growth ritual right at the end. And your character had this thing where everything around him would just die, but because the plant growth, it would bounce back. So there was like a wave of death and life like just following around for about a mile.
Yeah, we met legendary artifacts, and one of the minor detriments, everything within me, just every plant life. So
I mean, it's definitely awkward for the druid. So why don't you tell
I never want to
people-
make it awkward for the druid. Druid is one of my favorite classes.
Druid are a fantastic. You can do a lot with a druid. They're so like their damage if you want damage, their utility if you want utility. They've got a lot you can do. They're very creative with what you can get away with.
Oh yeah.
So I have a handful of questions here for you, and I've already got a question from the chat. They're asking if this is a JoJo's reference.
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I wish if it was a JoJo's reference, it would be way more obscure. It would be some band name, you know. This is just me. I am Jojo. My name is Jordan, and I've worked in industry for so long, and I just go Jojo, Jojo. So the moniker of Jojo, and it's more like gender neutral. I guess Jordan is also pretty gender neutral, but Jojo is more playful as well.
Ooh. I mean, you gotta have that. So, where can people find you? Because I know I linked your Twitter, but I also know you do some streaming. And what is it that you like to do there?
Yeah, my Twitter profile below me is truly the most toxic place I am on the internet. You'll find me there like retweeting D&D stuff or helping, promote friends D&D stuff or making comments, but mostly it's me bullying Ted Cruz and Matt Gaetz. And just calling them milk brains.
Those are definitely two appropriate people to bully. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Just go away. But you can find me on Instagram, Brutal Kind without the underscore. I'm part of the Cast Die podcast, where we release shows almost every week. We try to do every week. Right now, we're currently running a show called Everyday Folk, which I'm running. So you can find that. And then as far as streaming, I'm looking into doing it more through Cast. Right now, I'm mostly just jumping friends games, like Spontaneum and things here and there.
I mean, it sounds like you got your fingers in a lot of cookie jars.
Sometimes it's overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah. I
was like, I want to get all these edits done so that I just have a backlog of podcast episodes I can release, and then it's still week to week.
Yeah. I got my channel is kind of a variety channel, and because my channel is a variety channel, I am all over the place. So I do these ones that are D&D focused. I do other ones that are just sort of like a community gathering. Everybody's sitting around at a pub, but we're actually at Discord. I got one that's I do one called Demfec Friday, which is where we just find the dumbest thing that's happened this week, and it's just like, why? Why? I don't even do research for that show. People just send me shit, and I'm like, stop, please. Why? And half of the time it's Ted Cruz.
There's a lot of dumb people in this world. I don't know if you know that.
I've discovered this.
Or just yeah.
I was really hoping it was going to be like a one-off
Yeah,
show.
Florida with Matt Gaetz, that's like
Florida exists.
as long as you are pulling from a well of stupid people, well will never go dry.
That's how it feels. That is how I hope one day it will improve a little bit, but dreams are memes.
I always said it's like, oh, it'll take like a mass extinction of like the human race before everybody kind of like gets pushed back to reality. And it happened. It's, currently happening, and still no people are just digging in, putting their heads in the sand. So
this is like kicking and screaming, shove my
do?
feet in the dirt. No.
Yeah.
It's my right to be
I'm gonna be a
dumbass.
bad, selfish person. Yeah.
You can't make me be considerate, Mom.
No.
And that is how it is. At least it's how it feels.
Laughing about this because I'm just getting more and more depressed.
Oh, everybody's gonna get sad now. That's what we have D&D for, escapism.
Escapism. And that's why we should continue to put slavery into it.
Hey, there's the Hadouken.
We said we wouldn't talk about
there
it.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. No, it's fine. I'm not bothered by it. I've just been like, that's a topic, and I almost feel like I need to do a history lesson. Like, that's what it feels like.
I mean, if it's about D&D, you'll find that D&D for much of its tenure has not been a safe space for people.
Oh, as a female,
why can't it be?
I wouldn't know.
We have too many safe spaces in this world. Yeah, too many places.
On the first episode of Goblin's Lair, Sam came on from Spontaneum, and we were trading like stories about what had happened in D&D, and we were kind of talking about how like some D&D tables can be like kind of yikes. And I realized as I was talking about how many times my character's gotten grappled by tentacles. And I was like, that's kind of weird. I didn't really think about it at the time, but I was just like, all guy group, only girl character. And it's not like it only happened with one, because they rotated DMs sometimes. So it wasn't just like one of them doing this, and it wasn't always the same character or the same setting, but there was always tentacles, and I was always getting grappled. Yeah, weird.
It's I think one of the most valuable pieces that we have, as DMs and as players. And it's definitely something I started using as soon as we were streaming, but it's the checklist. It's like what are we comfortable with? What are we not comfortable with? What kind of things like really excite us? What kind of things scare us? And how okay are we with them being incorporated into the game? And I don't know why everybody doesn't utilize that thing. And when it comes to tentacles, we can even add another little thing that's just like kinks. And it's like, what do you kind of secretly want in this game?
What do you want in this game? But make that one anonymous. So like the DM just gets to read everybody's cards and then use it for blackmail later. I don't know. I'm a little bit of a brutal DM, so like I tend not to pull dice. Do you tend to fudge the dice in or against players ever? I tend to not fudge, personally.
I think it all comes down to the type of game and what you're kind of doing. I don't like to fudge either. I think dice tell a very interesting story. We live in a random, chaotic universe and world. Sometimes shit happens that you don't expect. And that's the other thing too, is that like, I think that dice can always be valuable and poor rolls can be valuable. You just have to make them contribute to the story and not just be a failure of moment. It's not like you didn't unlock the door and therefore what this thing happens.
Right. I definitely find that so with the changes that one D&D has been making with crits and failures. They basically just put in what people have been using the whole time anyway, which is nice. But like the way I do critical successes, depending, I just basically ask the player what they want to do. So it's like, okay, well, clearly you've got a 20 on this. What is it you want to happen? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
And then depending on what it is that they want to do, they either succeed or they partially succeed or they something that maybe they succeeded too much. So like I had a girl decide she was trying to get into like a gated rich community, and there were guards around that section of the town, and they wanted to get through the gate. So she's like, I want to intimidate the guard. And I said, okay. She rolls a 20. She was playing a half orc barbarian. So she's like this big scary lady. She rolls a crit. She's trained in intimidation. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to happen? She's like, I want to scare this guy so much he pisses his pants. And I'm like, okay. So the guard, yeah, no, you succeed. He's scared, and he's like, yeah, no, I'll let you through. What? Just I gotta go into the tower to open the gate. I gotta go hit the ratchet over there. So I'm just gonna go do okay. And she's like, yeah, go do it. And he's like, all right, all right. He runs in. A second goes by, an alarm bell goes off.
Right. Yeah. I think that's like the monkey's paw of the nat 20 on something you probably weren't going to succeed on is always very fun as well.
Yeah, she kind of
'Cause it's
like
you
had wandered on her own, and I'm like, you kind of need the whole party here, so maybe go get your teammates. Come back.
Yeah, I think that the rule specifically where it's like every 1 is a crit fail and every 20 is a crit success is like I think it's kind of a non-issue because people are going to play that the way that they do. I personally, I'm like, yeah, if you want to modify it in a way, but like every 20 is a success. It's like figure out, yes, like what you said, what your players want specifically. Because if you're like low level characters and you're like, I ask the king to give me his scepter, and it's like, I roll a 20. I guess it happens according to these rules, is that the king just
he's just gonna hand it. I asked Asmodeus, and Asmodeus is like, yeah, sure, here you go. To be fair, I would do that with Asmodeus. You just ask him for it. Okay, yeah, he just hands it to you, and it just sits there.
Can I have the wand of Orcus? Can you just hand?
Right? Yeah, take it.
Oh, sure. But we're all gonna house rules that in our own way. I really like yours. I think I might implement that where it's like, yeah, he gives you the scepter, and what that means is he points it at you, and you're arrested.
Right? Yeah. Like so, he's okay. He hands you the scepter and says, "Guards, these people are trying to steal from me." Like
exactly. Yeah. Beautiful.
Whoops. I feel like you didn't think about the consequences of your dumb actions.
That's my biggest issue in that's why I try not to fudge dice rolls, is because players will do everything that they can to like, get away with things and survive. And I'm like, there are consequences. There have to be consequences to your actions in this world. And then when you are like, this person's mad at you because you killed their dog, and they're like, we had to. We thought it was a demon. And you're like, well, now the person's mad at you. They don't like you. Sorry.
Surprise, surprise. There are consequences to my actions. I have a little bit of a trick that I have. So I'm working on a campaign, and it's a relatively large one. It's like a 1 to 20 styled campaign.
Love it.
And there's a whole lot of stuff happening, and the players exist in a bubble. Because I don't know who's going to be playing. I don't know, like, what's going on. So I kind of made the starting area a literal bubble. So what's happening on the outside is only barely tertiarily, noticeable or affects the area that they start in. So at least, like, there can be big stuff happening in the world, but little stuff that they get to deal with that they're not going to get grovel stomped by crazy bullshit happening. But
right.
I have a trick that I'm pulling on them. And it's that they're going to get trapped in their own player agency.
How does this manifest itself? I'm very curious.
So the starting area is inside a lich's demiplane.
Okay.
And they're stuck in a loop. So if the party TPKs, they go back to a point and start again in the loop. And
So
if they go left at a tunnel, and so like let's say they walked into a trap that was in the left of a dungeon. Well, now
yeah.
the players know that that's there. It's like, well, we're going to go right. I'm like, okay, roll a percentile dice and then roll a wisdom save.
Okay.
I mean, you fail that, you fail both of those, and now all of a sudden you're having an out of body experience where you're compelled to go to the left, and you're basically watching yourself from a third party walking into this spike trap. You know you already hit.
Yeah. Have
Yeah.
you ever read the book Timequake, Kurt Vonnegut?
I only read part of it. I read, I think, the first 3 chapters, then I had to put the book down and I got busy.
It's also like it's a tough one to get into because he's a bizarre dude. But I like read it halfway once and then I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then I picked it up again, a few months later, and it's about like there was a timequake at one point. There was a tremor in time and it sent everybody back like 5 years. And so for the next 5 years, they have all the memories of like what happened and blipping back, but they're going through a process that was like predetermined by cause and effect, for like millions of years before you even came around, and it's too late. So they had to like watch their husband slip on the diving board and like break his neck and become a paraplegic, and like every part of them is like, no, don't. I know that this happens, but
well, and the husband knows. So the husband's like, oh, yeah. Shit. Oh, no.
This is where that happens. Yeah. And so it's kind of like the blip, too. It's like at the moment where they all get, once again, their own agency back, it's just chaos.
Amazing. Well, because then it's like, did you get your agency back, though?
Yeah. Now we have questions about, our own, self-determination.
Yeah. I've been on a handful of channels and did a lot of philosophy conversations. And one of them was about free will. Ended up being very interesting because like I just went full zen by the end of the conversation. I was like, free will doesn't exist. Everything is determined. However, the amount of information is so vast, we never have enough processing power to know. So free will is the best way to describe the experience we're having.
That's right. That's
the
chillest way to look at
it. When you understand you control nothing, you control everything.
Control everything.
Oh
man. I mean, I'm glad to be talking with you about this right now because I just got back from Denver and I've got a good amount of smoke around me. And so my mind has been very much just back in this like, hey, let's chill together.
That's what it is. And that's the way to be. Is that
I think that's the best way to be at a table for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. You were predetermined to ask it, so I already knew.
Yeah, doing that at a table is, I find that I see people asking a lot of questions about how to be a good DM and how to have this and that and how do you be a good player and what, and I don't know. I think being like generally chill and accepting is a good, being patient at the very least, I think is one of the best qualities.
Yeah. So I agree. Right now, if you want to hear one of the most chill like games, actual plays recorded on the internet, my game Everyday Folk was literally me just being like, I just want to sit around with like 4 really exceptional players and talk about what day-to-day life in a little town on the mountains would be like. Like they're just, one of them's a butcher, one of them's like an apprentice blacksmith, one of them is like a horse wrangler, and another one is like an apprentice healer. And there's like exciting things that happen like to the town and they react to it. But for the most part, it's like them walking their dog. And I'm just like, what do you want to do today? What does your room look like when you wake up? And it's just like really living in the shoes of these like chill kids. And sometimes they go out and party and then they are hungover the next morning and they have to make constitution saving throws. But at the end of the last episode, we're kind of focusing on each of the 4 main characters as like chapters for the beginning of the story. So we kind of like zoom in on one for a session. And we spent an entire morning with our character Butch, played by this amazing Gwyneth Benson. And it was just her and her mom having breakfast after like a night of celebration in the town, and they were like eating bacon together, and there was a moment of quiet, and the mom was just like brought up this girl's kind of like lost father, and she was just like, he would be so proud if he could like see you now.
Oh.
And the player was just like, I start eating faster and I want to get out of this conversation. And then after the game, I kept this part in the recording because I thought it was just like a really cool moment. Gwyneth was like, did you want me to open up more? And I was like, I don't want you to do anything except what you feel is honest in that moment. And I didn't plan on her like talking to you about your dad. I just felt very connected to you, the player, and the character in the moment. And I was probably thinking that like when you eat, you look like your father to your mother. And she just, so like I didn't plan that moment, and I just want you to respond honestly to it. Every decision that you make is the correct decision as long as it is honest to the world and honest to your character and honest to the story that you want to tell.
Oh, that's so
So
adorable. That's
yeah, when
so
you
cute. My players would never trust me to do that. If I did that with my players, they'd all be like, "Okay, so when's the meteor gonna fall on the on the town?"
that's kind of why I started this game, is because I got so sick of like going to a table and everybody's like, I poke the next stone on this ground with my quarterstaff, and it's like, we're all just here to like play together. I
Yeah,
don't want to just times. Sometimes I do, but I'll usually let you know.
the campaign that I'm trying to work on and run and definitely starts off as like the stereo this I want players who are good players who can take like a stereotype and then make the character. Right? So it's like I want you guys are good people. You guys are setting out to be heroes. That's what you want to do. You're going to go around and you're going to help. But you can still build the person, like the individual and what their
Yeah.
hangups are and what they're and then like that fall from finding out the world you're the bright-eyed not like heroes and then you're just like, "Oh, everything is shit." How do we can we fix it? Can this be but I want them to be like heroic enough that they're willing to try because it is very much like a broken world. It is very much it is a group of young heroes that are in a bubble that get out of that bubble eventually to then find a world that's just it's surviving, but it's not it's on its downturn and what can you do? Can you fix it?
Yeah. I think that is such like a, all of role playing a lot, for the last like 30 years, was like mired in pessimism and like world is dark and all of these kind of things. And that's understandable. But the kind of players then you create at tables are like opportunistic pessimists. And I would rather sit down at a table of people who trust me, to
Yeah.
like put together a compelling story, who are optimists also as characters too. So
Yeah.
they cannot like put down a character that has ideals that look towards a better future. And so when you present them with a world that is not the golden ideal, they have things to fight against or fight for
Yeah, they're
instead of just
motivated.
yeah.
One of the fun things that I have set up in this campaign, and I really want to see how like heroes of this ilk deal with this because I'm gonna be messing with alignments because alignments are fun. Do you like alignments? Before I go down this road, do you? Because I know
Again, I
some
think
people
they're a
are like
thing.
yeah, some people are like nah.
I think they're a thing. I think that especially if it's something like lawful good or anything that has to do with like lawful, then I think that they're an important thing for a
Mm-hmm.
character. Like a paladin exists by his oath, and his
Yeah,
oath is law. And so when you say lawful good, is that for him to remain in the standing of like lawful good and as a paladin, he needs to adhere to a specified group of like tenets or procedures.
yeah,
And I think those things are very fun for role playing. And so I'm like, yeah, if you're going to play a paladin, you have to live by your oath. But like, there is nothing that is like, I don't like to play in lines of like naturally good or neutral or evil because I don't think that's a concept that really exists. I like to see demons that are like, fuck, everything's kind of fucked up.
shit, man.
Yeah,
You got like a surfer ninja.
this place sucks.
This
There
place
is
is
no surfing in
ass.
hell.
Nobody
They were
likes it
right.
here. I mean, I like to run
Um,
Asmodeus like that too. I like to run Asmodeus like he's like, I mean, do you think that bad people shouldn't be punished?
truly.
Do you want bad people to just go and exist in the lawful good space and fuck it all up? What
That's
do you
why we
want me to
just
do about it? I just work here, dude.
remove like realms, eternal realms of morality from the D&D space. Everybody's just like there's no like higher beings. They're just beings on another plane that look prettier, and so we've given them deference,
Well, there you
you know.
go.
But really, they're just like, yeah, I mean, he's really good at harp, I guess. But
So I kind of did that. What I've done is I've taken the gods, and none of the gods are the original gods anymore. So they're just mortals who have taken the space of what's supposed to be this idealized tenant or this idealized like what is neutral to a mortal. It's meaningless to a mortal. Like that's not
yeah,
like so, but if you have a mortal taking the place of the quintessential neutrality, like how is a human supposed to, or how is a mortal, I should say, I shouldn't say human because it could be like an elf or whatever. But how are they supposed to deal with something that is like how are they going to replace Bahamut? Right? Like what happens when you start taking like humanistic ideals and putting them in places where they're supposed to represent something that they can't really even do or understand themselves.
yeah, and that's part of I think the story too is like
Mm-hmm.
understanding that these. Oh no, I think my headphones might have gone out.
Oh no!
Yeah, they did. Give me one second.
Hey, I believe. Hey, you good?
Yeah, we're good. We are
Hey, there
good.
we go.
I had a backup ready to go.
Oh, clever. I wouldn't do that. I
So
would just be screwed.
oh god. So I actually just at Gen Con picked
Yes.
up a book and I was mostly turned on to it by the art. Like I just thought it was like a really beautiful book. I'm gonna quick run out and grab it.
Yeah, grab
But it
it.
is about it's about creating characters that are avatars of gods and
Yes.
like it's a whole system based on that and it's how best to like do that. And I don't know if I'm gonna play that game anytime soon, but I
Definitely
was
rip
just so
things out of it.
fascinated, yeah, by the talk of that we were just having about like ideals and how do you manifest them into like a personality. Because I think that's very cool in role playing. Like I generally, also because I'm an actor, I want to play characters that are like very different from myself.
Right.
Um, and so, you know, it's I like giving myself the constraints of alignment or like morality or adherence of laws that I can then play within and you
Yeah.
know stretch my or test out my limits. You know.
There's something interesting in the books, and it is there's creatures called flumps. And for any of you, I've talked about flumps before. So for anybody out there who doesn't know what flumps are like jellyfish aberrants, but they're good aligned. But if you go into the history and look at the alignment for flumps, they're lawful good. And if you look at their society, they are basically ableist racists with that take any flumps that do not have a color and kick them out of society because they're basically like, you don't have clerical powers, bye. And then they also have their hierarchical society is based on what color they are because what color they are dictates how powerful of a cleric they are. And so it's like, but they're lawful good and they're just and they live in the Underdark. So if they kick out a flump that has no abilities and no powers, it's gonna go die.
Yeah, I mean, a law is not an inherently good thing, as we as we see every day.
Right.
Laws are threats. This is the quote that everybody I think can
Yeah.
get into. And police are an occupying force.
Mm.
They're set in there by the upper class to keep us under the rule. Anyway, anti-capitalism rant over.
Hey.
Laws are not good. And so saying somebody's lawful doesn't say that they are, you know, of an ilk that you want to like spend the night with.
Right.
It means that they adhere to a certain set of rules that are either determined by a larger power or are ingrained within them so severely.
I think that there's a
Um,
misnomer that I think people kind of get confused by when it comes to alignments, and that good and evil don't mean morally good or morally evil by our standards. Good and evil basically mean pragmatic for yourself or pragmatic for everybody.
yeah.
And so lawful good would just mean what's pragmatically good for society. But then you start asking the question, it's like, okay, well, who's deciding what is and is not good for the society, right?
And that's why when you hear people talk about running evil campaigns or like
Mm-hmm.
sitting down with evil characters at a table, for the most part, the complaint that you get is that it becomes like a like me game, is
Mm-hmm.
because evil people are not looking
Selfish.
out for the yeah, they're selfish people.
I don't know. I enjoy evil characters, but I don't tend to allow them unless the player is experienced.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I don't, if the player hasn't really played a whole ton of D&D and hasn't played or I'm not familiar with them, I tend to not allow evil characters only because especially if like the whole group isn't evil. I do really want to run a game in the Nine Hells though, where like everybody gets to make a devil and then you're on the front lines of the blood war, and the goals
Right.
are whatever your goals are as a devil, to basically climb the hierarchy of like, I don't know, become an archdevil, become part of Asmodeus's court, yeah, whatever. That's the goal.
I mean, those things are so fun. It's like it's especially if you don't take your characters like you really love them, but you don't take them too,
Don't take them
you don't
too
treat them too
seriously.
preciously. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're gonna blow up in a spectacular way at some point.
I have one of the NPCs, or two of the NPCs, I should say, that are little bit of linchpin in the big campaign I'm running are old players. It's like I used to play these characters, and I
Very
never
cool.
get to play them, so I'm like, fuck it, I'm making them NPCs.
I
But they don't join the party. Careful on the NPCs.
I have a through line of almost every character that I've ever played in like a home campaign. I've like said, okay, they're all kind of resurrected versions of this central soul. And so they
Very
have like
cool.
certain similarities to them, but they are all, I'm the only one that knows the backstory there.
Oh, that's so cool, though. Do you deal with, okay, how much lore do you tend to utilize? Because I take a lot of the lore and the back lore, and then I tweak it for what I need, but my stories tend to be very, very lore heavy. And because of the way I've sort of got this campaign set up, I'm relying on the players to do bare basic metagaming. So I'm like, at one
Yeah.
point I'm messing with the alignments, and at one point they're gonna find out there's a rampaging dragon in the north, and they're players, and I'm gonna be like, oh, okay, so they're gonna be like, oh, it's a white dragon, let's go deal with it. Not a white dragon, because I'm messing with the expectation of the alignments, right? So,
Right.
but I'm relying on that little bit of metagame in the back of your brain.
Yeah. I think I don't I know that players are going to metagame. I know that to a certain extent. I
Yeah.
think some of my favorite players are players who play against the meta because they know it like doesn't work with their character. But like everybody's going to know that like if you fight a troll, like use fire or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just like make up my own stuff. Like especially talking about like Wizards lore and Wizards content. It's like, yeah, I'll use Waterdeep as a location because it's like fun, but I'm gonna make it
It's a
seem
great
like
book, yeah.
just like New York City, and be like,
Right.
yeah, you go around and there's like magic carriages that are like taxi cabs, and it's like everything is like modern but done with magic.
I like to
Um,
steal from everything,
yeah,
always.
for sure.
One of my favorite things
So
just to go back to alignment and gods, in the Legend of Drist series, the R.A. Salvatore books, um, Drist, the character, gets kind of like in a tiff with Meliki, the goddess of nature, because Meliki is like, you need to go kill all the orcs, like genocide, like they all need to go die, and Drist was like, no. And she's like, they're unnatural and evil and you need to go kill them. And he's like, I was part of the drow. There are individuals that are part of that. She's like, yeah, great. I don't care. And so but and it's great to kind of look at that dynamic. But if you were to put a mortal trying to understand a god's reasoning, for all you know, the problem isn't the orcs. The problem is Grumsh. And so Meliki's
Right.
like, no, no, no. If the orc are too powerful or too strong or there's too many of them, then that's granting Grumsh power, and that becomes a problem for us as gods in a whole nother area. So like, how do you possibly know, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you'll see so many characters and they'll like be told to do something by a god and they'll be like, but why? And it's like, well, I don't think at any point to say like crit successes and crit fails is like this god on whatever scale they're functioning on, like probably isn't going to explain themselves to you. So
You
it's
might
either
not
like
understand them
do it or
anyway.
don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, because a lot of like a hero would say, well, then we should deal with Grumsh then. It's not the orc's fault. And it's like it's not that simple.
You
Like,
want to? You want me to send you to
yeah, great. All right, go deal with him then.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, great. We kill Gromsh, his abilities and stuff. We just pass on to the next person who's gonna take Gromsh's place. Like, like we didn't
There's
try
always
that.
another Grumsh.
I enjoy how much more like the average mortal when interacting with a god in D&D will think that they know better almost always.
Yeah.
But why though?
Well, because we've been fed this BS by God of War and all these things where they're just lascivious folk, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean they usually are. That's the most fun thing too. Is then for them when you do find out like their grand reasoning and reckoning is, it's like, oh well, they spilled wine on them at last week's Dionysian festival.
I saw Sam on his role playing account for the shitty ideas posted about a character who a warlock who's like in shit with their god, and I'm like, oh boy, do I have a god for you. And it was like a dead god, and the goal of the warlock is to help bring the god back, and I'm like immediately Nerul, because Nerul is the original god of the dead. But now
Right.
there's a difference between the Raven Queen, who's the goddess of death, and Nerul, the god of the dead. Basically, Nerul went crazy because he kept getting more and more powerful exponentially, because the more people died, the stronger he got.
Got to put a cap on it.
Gotta
People
put a
got to
cap
stop
on it.
dying.
So the Raven Queen, when she killed him and took his place, the other gods went, hey, yay, thanks, great for doing that, but maybe. So now you've
Yeah,
got the
she just
Raven Queen being pissed at all the other gods, and Nerul floating around being like, well, shit, and that she's his ex. Because that's how she got close enough to kill him.
um this is like, it's truly wild how much lore there is in D&D and like how deep you can get into whatever realm or whatever plane of existence.
Yep.
And that in D&D 1 they're just going to be like everything is correct, and also none of it really matters if you don't want it to.
That's what I found that they did with alignments. They were like, hey, listen, here's alignments.
Yeah.
It's a tool if you want it, but
Which, I mean, it's not the worst thing because they are so ubiquitous as like an RPG or a TTRPG, is to say like this is an open source system and there's lore and stuff like that, and like have fun with it because like we know that you're going to anyway. But it is something to say for like one of the largest game producers in the game to just be like, we encompass everything now, and all those little games that you want to buy, like you don't really need them because D&D is the one.
a little bit bold, a little bit arrogant,
Yeah.
a little bit of hubris there, but I
That's why it's up to us, small designers and players, to tear them down from the inside.
I do enjoy that Wizards spent a lot of time pissing off their own fan base. Like,
yeah, in every direction.
Oh yeah, just everybody. Like, given how I think Wizards has done more to open their system up to be more inclusive than most game developers. Like especially like high-end game developers, like your AAA style video gaming. They're not the balls to spend like the past, I don't know, decade doing nothing but pissing off your core fan base.
Yeah. Going woke, baby.
I mean, I'm a little bit of a fan. 4 pissed people off so much.
Yeah. And now it's just like constant comments of like, why do they have to be two men in a picture at Strixhaven? Like, and it's like,
you big
why?
baby.
Like, go away from the table. Nobody wants you at this table, and that's fine.
Go
I think
stay
like
in your
too
own
many
table.
products. Yeah, too many products are too afraid to piss people off, and it's
Well,
like,
yeah, and it's like
we don't need everybody's money all the time.
but yeah, there's something called building sustainability rather than trying to grow constantly, because that's not, sustainable. And so what you
Yeah.
want to do is you want to build a good rapport back and forth with your customers. And Wizards was in a very toxic place for a very long time because they couldn't do anything without people getting mad. And so what they did is they basically pressed the fuck it button and went, fuck it, let's just make it mad. What are they going to do?
They're going to be mad either way.
Exactly.
What are we supposed to do about it?
I think 4 needs to almost to be re-released as a card game pack. I think if they sold it as cards, I think they would have done pretty well. Instead of having to print them off yourself, and
yeah. I really liked, I think you tweeted an idea about having like a bar rescue show, but for bad D&D groups, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I
would
like that.
love that. Hell's Kitchen, but go around and travel the world and solve bad tables problems where nobody knows how to communicate.
It's problematic.
You didn't read the book, did you?
You donut.
You're an idiot sandwich.
Advantage is not given because you deserve it. It's earned because you fought for it. Yeah, but I've in so many regards, like you're talking about like what kind of table you like to be at, and whenever I read these D&D horror stories, I'm so grateful that it is in this like large kind of ubiquitous stable place that it is now, because I have been so lucky at every table I've sat down at, and the ones that I don't, where I'm like, this sucks and this shit is not for me, I'll just walk away from, because there's so many people that want to play this game right now.
Yeah, it definitely used to be that the D&D horror story tables were pretty much the majority of tables, and that was a scary thing. And I mean, I almost had so I used to play Friday Night Magic way back in the day, and it was an experience. Being one of the only girls at the gaming store is an experience. I don't really recommend it. I hear things have gotten better. I don't know. I don't leave the house. But I had a guy almost like this big guy, played there all the time, was like a regular, basically felt like he owned the place, walked around like he owned the place. Almost table flip on me because he lost Magic. He was so mad. And it's like, wow, dude.
Yeah, I guess I should acknowledge that I do speak from a position of privilege to say that I've never sat down at a table I've really been that uncomfortable at.
Well, I mean, it's lucky, it's nice, and it's I don't know if it's too much of a privilege thing, as more of a when to walk away, and so like you clearly could have gotten onto those tables, but if you're just like not for me and you leave, great.
I'm happy to do that in any situation, a job, a party. I'm just like, all right, this sucks. I'll see you later.
Bye.
And also all the tables, for the most part, that I was sitting down at, it was like a nice split of, different people. And so at least it's not just a bunch of like really aggressive white men sitting around saying about how they slew a orc barbarian female really aggressively, because that's not my shit either.
I flipped one of the first DMs I had. I freaked him out because he used to use this term where if something happened and he was very much a DM versus player DM. And it wasn't that great because he kept bringing in new players, didn't know how to play. And so it's like a weird power trip. And so
Yeah.
he used to like to use this term called, and he used to say, sit on my dick, right? And that was like his term to be like, well, suck it. This is what happens. Well, one time I nailed him. I got him on something, and I can't remember what it was, but I outsmarted him. And I turned around and he's just like, oh, whatever. And I was sitting there and we were at my apartment, laying on my couch, eating my food. And I just looked at him and went, sit on my dick. He had to leave.
Oh my God. It's also like, why are we doing this if we're not like having fun, if we're not having a good time? Why are we doing this if it's just like, I mean,
Combative.
essentially, yeah, a power trip and combative. And
Yep.
like, it's just a game. It's a very fun, like, of course, it means so much more to some other people as far as like escapism and representation and ways that they can be themselves or perform in another regard that they
Yep.
maybe haven't been comfortable to do in, IRL.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what we are doing is putting down numbers on a piece of paper and drawing cute pictures and playing. You loved that character, you had a bad DM and they killed your character or whatever. Stand up, take that piece of paper, that character, which is still yours, and bring it to another table where somebody's like happy to play the game that you want to play.
Yeah.
Because
You have options
I'm happy
now.
to play any kind of game. And if somebody's just, yeah, we have so many options on what to play. You don't even need to play D&D. Take that character and go play like Girls on Bikes or whatever,
Gamma World. I'm a fan of Gamma
Yeah.
World. Gamma World was a lot of fun. There's something like tickles my funny bone about being able to play a character that is a swarm of Yetis. I don't know. It's something about that like just makes me happy on the inside. I love like absurd nonsense. I'm a fan of when my players come up with absurd nonsense. I encourage absurd nonsense. Just understand there are consequences to absurd nonsense. And sometimes those consequences are good, and sometimes those consequences are bad, because as long as it's absurd, fun nonsense, great. If it's nonsense, no, I ain't about that. That makes sense, right?
I just want a quick, yes, 100%. Where I feel like, it's all in the game you play. That's what I'm saying. And I'm so happy to play so many games. Right now, though, I'm like, let's talk about realism.
Yeah.
Let's talk about like how hard it is for you to carry that bag of horseshoes from the, it's like
encumbrance.
Yeah, you have a strength of 8. You have a strength of 8. You're not going to be able to do that. It's like, so I'm like, let's make real world characters.
I like the DM who's like, oh, I made my character to mostly be like me, but a little bit stronger. Okay, cool. I'm going to pick that up. Do it.
Show
pick
me.
it up. Show me.
I just want to show this book quickly
Yes,
as I talk about creating realistic, like human characters. Here's how to create a god as a character.
That is a cool
godsend.
book.
Yeah, the art. Like I said, the art is really what drove me to it. But it's just like you want to create a fucking like expression of trickery as a character who's like really the embodiment of the god of trickery. Loki, maybe. Who gives a shit? The Juggernaut. Oh yeah.
Ooh.
But yeah, I got in an argument with Mark, who started the Cast Die podcast on Twitter, and it was about like realism in game and like rules as written. And he has a big problem with jump height rules as written, which I think a lot of people do. But it's also, once again, who cares? Don't use the rule, whatever. But he was saying, according to rules as written, an elephant can jump higher than a cat, and elephants famously cannot jump. Or he was saying a level 1 character has the ability to break the high jump. And I just think it's like D&D 5e is not built for us and be a farmer. It's not built for us to say like, oh, I'm just like a guy from a town who like took up a sword. It's built for us to come in as already like extraordinary characters. You know, a level 1 wizard in a world is like a pretty extraordinary thing to accomplish. And so you come in with a backstory that has like lore and legend, and you finding an artifact that transformed your body or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so to say like a level 1 character could break a high jump record, it's like, yeah, this is a fantasy world where
A
this is
high
a
jump
hero.
record
If they
for
have a
us,
6,
not a high jump
yeah,
record in that world.
yeah, you have a strength 16 level 1 character, that's a strong fucking character.
Yeah.
You know, they've done a lot to either achieve that strength or they're a beautiful freak of nature.
Well, and that's nothing compared to what you came into as a level 1 4E character. Like
Exactly.
a level 5, like a level 1 4E character is like between a level 3 and a level 5 5th edition character. And 4th edition went to level 30 if I remember correctly, not level 20. Basically became a god at the end of 4th edition.
What is the highest level that you've ever played up to besides like a goofy one shot or something?
In a long-term campaign, I think the highest I got was level 16 in 4th edition.
Okay.
So that was pretty silly. I took that character. That character is one of the NPCs now. And I bumped both of them so that they're a pair. They go together. There's like a captain and a second in command. And I bumped both of them to level 26. But the way I made them level 26 was I just allowed them to 6th level of multi-class. So it's not
Right.
I gave them like crazy fucking meta game shit. I just let them multi-class because I think that's a fun way to go past level 20 is to be like,
For
hey,
sure.
pick some new shit, and it doesn't like totally break things. But that's because they need to be like god level competitive for endgame.
Yeah, one of my home games I'm running right now is basically a retelling of the plot of Final Fantasy VII, and so I've created all of the characters as I like handed them out, or like people could pick them at the beginning of the game, and we're just going through the plot, and I've like expanded on it and done all this stuff.
That's so cool.
But it's it's very fun.
I love this.
One of the things though is because it's all like skilled players. It's a different kind of table. It's a game that's about like combat. It's about like all your things to the optimal position, and I create encounters that are like problem solving equations less than like, you know, just straight out battles. Figure out this encounter. And one of the things is that like Final Fantasy VII, these games, by the end of it, you're like gods on the planet. You're like jumping off falling rocks up a mountainside and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I want them to feel that. But also, I really feel when you're like trying to create an epic level campaign that the level system in 5e is like kind of restrictive and kind of weird. And like, it's like, yeah, I want them to feel more powerful, but I don't want to give them all the stuff that comes at the next level. So like, and magic items are just a band-aid for as far as that goes.
Yeah.
And so I'm always like, all right, they beat like a boss level encounter, like a high level encounter. The things I'm going to start doing are like, all right, you can take like a list of things that you might like qualify for. And one of those things might be like increased reaction. And therefore you get to take now 2 reactions during every turn of combat.
So
and then if they
cool.
take increased reaction the next time that they level up in a way that like gives them that same, you know, tier or like branch of leveling up, they can take like improved or like optimal reaction, and that's you get to take a reaction for every dexterity modifier that you have like during a round.
That's so cool. So it's like you're basically like recreating like branches, like skill trees.
Skill trees for them that are outside of the general leveling system.
That's
because,
so cool.
Yeah, it lets you customize and optimize your character in other ways. It gives options that don't feel like all too much is being handed to you. It's just kind of like looking at the skills they already have and finding ways to make them more powerful. And so, because like getting from level like 6 to 10,
yeah,
it's like you have a whole new character by the end sometimes.
Yeah. I like to have I like to give out feats. And based on 2 different things. One being like, hey, listen, you get to match the 4th edition Paragon paths. So it's like, all right, so at level like 5, take a feat. At level 10, take a feat. At level 15, take a free feat. And so that way that like I don't really like having to sacrifice your ability score increases because I want the players to be powerful at the end. Like I want
Yeah.
them to get strong because I think there's just a lot of DMs out there that really struggle with trying to balance. Oh, this one person's AC is insane. Like I can never hit them. What do I do? And it's like make them make a
Make
saving
something with a
throw.
strength modifier 16 or make them make a saving throw. Like play we have to know our characters' strengths and weaknesses and not exploit them, but also
Right.
like use it so that they feel active in the situation.
Right, you
And
want
if you
them
want
to
your
be
character to feel in
effective.
danger,
Right, you want them to be
yeah,
effective, but you also don't want them to be completely unstoppable or feel like they're basically completely immortal. So you don't want to target them, but that is very much dependent on what are they fighting. Because some
yeah,
things are a lot smarter than other things, and some things have that's why you gotta have a reoccurring villain, or like your big bad evil guy knows the party. And because if the big bad evil guy knows the party, then the big bad evil guy is gonna plan for the party, making that encounter suddenly a lot more difficult and justifiably so. It's not like, oh, this goblin just happens to hit like a fucking truck for no reason.
yeah. An example from the Final Fantasy VII game is I had Cloud encounter Reno in the church as he does, spoiler alert, after he falls down into Sector 5. And I created a character that's pretty challenging, and Cloud just embarrassed my Reno. And I was like, yeah, that's great. That's a great story moment. The next time that Reno shows up, he's going to be like, he has the full force of Shinra behind him. He's going to be
Yeah.
like, yeah, I got on this cool jacket that's got like, mithril polymerization in it and all sorts of stuff. He's going to have like 3 actions a turn. Who knows what he
Yeah,
can
he's
do?
gonna prep for
But
next
it's like,
time. He got
yeah,
embarrassed and
and
now
he's
he's
going to make
got a
sure that
pride.
Cloud is like out of commission as much as he can.
Yeah, or yeah, get him out as much as he can ahead of time before confronting him because it's Reno and
Yeah.
Reno's a weenie like that.
Yeah, he's
Oh, I
oh,
love this. I love this. That's so cool. I also like the idea of
yeah.
giving out feats arbitrarily to a character that is continuously doing a thing. So, like, if this
Yeah.
character does a lot of a specific thing, that there's a feat to make them better at. So they're like constantly casting, I don't know, comprehend language, or they're constantly trying to decipher and understand different languages, and they're spending a lot of time like writing down runes and trying to figure stuff out. Give them the linguist feat. Like, just give them 2
Yeah.
extra free languages. They've been doing that for like the past 6 months. Give them something.
I think that's so great. It's how I'm running kind of everyday folk as well, is
Mm,
that experience and skills come through player choice and action.
right.
And so like we're not just going to go up. They're basically level 0 characters, and they're not just going to increase by, getting enough experience points by doing enough things. It's like if you continue to do your job, or if you continue to do something that you haven't done before, it's all about like if that one of them wants to try to start lock picking, it's like, yeah, you're probably going to not be very good at it in the beginning, but as you keep doing it, if you keep training, if you keep trying it, I'm going to give you a little point in that, or like a skill or something that helps you
Yeah.
out with it.
I
Yeah.
like to if somebody tells me, like a player tells me, like I want to be good at this and I am focusing on this thing, and they actually do that and they put their points in. Like if I get some poor sap who decides to be like, I want to be able to open every door and lock ever, and I'll be like, okay, put your expertise point in sleight of hand, put your expertise point in lockpicking, and you take the thief, and then you start like just going that and put all your points into dex. I'm gonna let you stack. I'm gonna let you stack your sleight of hand and your thieves tools because that's what you're
Yeah.
doing. That's what you're spending all your time doing. You're just like, I pick every lock ever. So now all of a sudden you've got double expertise on top of like training, and you're just like you've got reliable talent. You're basically rolling at a minimum 30. And I'm like, no. You are good at this. This is what you do.
And it's also our job then as a DM, where it's like, oh, there's a lot. Yeah, the door is locked, but you can easily pick it. Like to fucking make a roll, or like stop the momentum of story, because
Yeah.
if you roll for an average door on a home, you know how to do this.
Yeah, you've done this before. You've been around. You've been picking locks for a really long time. I like the idea though that it's like it doesn't remove that entirely from the gameplay, because maybe the thief's not with the party. Door's locked. Do any of you
Yeah,
know
of
how to
course.
open a door? And they're all just like, shit.
Well, also like if we're playing D&D and our best like puzzle or roadblock is like a locked door, um, it's like they're gonna find a way through it. I mean,
Well,
there's
I
Eldritch
mean,
Blast, all sorts of
and the
things.
BB, like the big bad evil guy by the end is gonna be like, oh, okay, so doors don't stop these motherfuckers. I remember we played Tomb of Horrors once and we kind of broke it because we had one big slab stone door. And it was so like just a good enough door that we had a barbarian who was strong enough to carry it. And so we just brought this door with us through the entire tomb. And like, the door, so it's like, oh no, this thing is coming through the wall. Put the door in front of it.
Yeah.
Oh no, we've fallen off this bridge. Okay, throw a rope down. Now throw the door down. Fling the person up.
Door is like now the most important NPC. It's just a
right? This door needs a name.
non-sentient slab of concrete. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you'd be surprised at like how creative players can get. And I just don't think that's something that should be punished or frowned upon. So like being creative about how you approach a situation is huge in my opinion. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
use some weird spell to do something that I never even considered that it could have done.
That's the thing is that it's not about, DM versus player. It's about creating challenging situations. It's about challenging each other. And I think that that's one thing that, a lot of us have either like made it into our minds that challenge is like negative. Somebody sitting across from you, like argument is negative all the time. Or like, but it's room for growth. It's room for lateral thinking. Problem solving is one of the best things about D&D.
Yeah.
And when I'm constantly surprised by the people who sit at my tables and I go like, wow, I created the problem and I never even thought of that solution. I need to reward this now at this moment.
Yeah. I enjoy like coming up
Yeah.
with puzzles that don't actually have solutions.
Just letting them
you just let them figure it out and be like, oh, you know what? That's cool. All right, I'm getting bored of waiting for you. So that works.
Yeah.
And it lets them like
gives
them time to think about it, makes them feel accomplished, gives them the illusion of choice.
Yeah. I think that is such I maybe saw something about that. Is it like the lazy DM or something where it's like, yeah, just create a set of things and there's no actual solution, but they will come up with the solution and you can just say like, good job.
Yeah, you just do like, all right, you walk into the room, there are two stone gargoyle looking statues, and there's a big door in the center. The door is closed. There's 4 empty like divots that look like they would fit a circle. On the floor, there's looks like a magic circle carved in with a north, south, east, and west point on each one. That's the room. Turns out you can just open the door.
I checked to see if there's hinges. Yeah.
Just open the door.
At Gen Con, I sat down at a classic advanced 1E table. It was run for charity, and it's truly just a guy sitting there, and he's like, you walk into a room and there's 6 tiles in the middle of the floor on the other way to the door, and they all have names of different monsters written on them, and they're all different colors. What do you do? And you're like, I like look around if there's anything else written on the walls. And he's like, you see on the other side of the room by the door, there's things written on the other side. And you're like, can I jump over it? And he's like, you can try. And you're like, okay. And then it's just like, you jump over, all of a sudden a wall of fire comes out, disintegrates you. What's the other player doing?
Roll a save.
Oh yeah. Everything is Tomb of Horrors or whatever.
Yeah. That's the meat grinder, the meat grinder games. Yeah. I've had times where I don't actively usually try to kill players. Like, not usually. I TPK'd a good number of times in 4th edition. And it's hard to kill players in 4th edition. But I'm like, I can't justify keeping you alive. What are you doing?
You made so many bad choices. You guys have to stop that.
I had players.
What do you do?
Shadowfell, and there was a war going on. It was a 3-way war, and they knew about this war. It was between Orcus, Vecna, and the Raven Queen. And they were in the Shadowfell, and they were in Vampire Town. They knew the lord of this town was vampires, and they left, and they met the Raven Queen's people that were Shatterkai, and they made buddies with the Shatterkai. Then the place got carpet bombed. And so they took, instead of going with the people that were fleeing and escaping and go a way that made sense, they were like, hey, can we have a wagon? And they were like, well, we're using them, but I mean, we're not taking this one. And it's like an ornately raven, it's like a party wagon. It's not for like traveling with goods. It's just for show. And they started calling it the Raven Mobile. And what did they do? They sacked it with as much shit as they possibly could and drove it back to Vampire Town to try to sell it to the lords.
Boy.
And surprise, surprise, they got ambushed and killed. I'm like, what did you expect?
Yeah. Well, they should have known it was us.
Well, they knew it was you, but you showed up with. They don't care. You're not friends with these people. It was silly.
In a recent, in the last episode of Folk, Dom, who's our only like non, actor playing, but he's always just somebody who like will make an interesting choice, and he's always like, he's a positive player. But I think at this point he had, gotten a little high, maybe a little drunk during our session, and there's right now sheep, like a stampede of sheep rampaging through their town, giant sheep too, so they're like 8-foot tall sheep. And there's a giant like following after them who just seems like not responding to anything. He's just like crying and roaring and I'm like, all right, so this is happening, blah, 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 blah. All right, we'll cut back to Dominic. What is Olafur doing right now? And he's like, I think that I might want to go check in with Felix and see what he thinks we should do about the situation. But then, I also want to go over to my house and just make sure that like everybody there is safe. So maybe I'll do the first. And I was like, you need to make, I was like, all right, this isn't part of the recording, Dominic. This is split second decisions that you are making
Set
right
the
now.
timer,
What are you doing? Yeah. And it's like, I was like, get in the moment right now, because everybody else is like, I take, and it like feels exciting. And then Dom's like,
I don't know.
I'm not really sure what I should be doing. And it's like, well, that's an answer. If you're not sure, then you're lost in a moment of indecision. Yep. And I translate that to sometimes like my at-home games with a lot of players where it is more like tactical combat focused. Yeah. I'm like, we're not going to get slogged down in battle. When it gets to your turn, you have like a minute to announce your action. If you don't announce your action, we're skipping over your initiative for that turn.
Yeah, so you get that timer going to keep your players engaged, keep your combat interesting.
And you can say to them, like, I'm going to give you 5 minutes before combat starts because you're like a squad to kind of like talk tactics and what everybody should be doing. But after that, we're going to go like this.
Yeah, yeah. And like that works really well with experienced players who know their characters. Because
does not help.
God, if you have players that haven't really, like, they're not that familiar with their character sheet, it's like, it's like, I don't. That's why I don't encourage,
especially if they're spellcasters too.
Yeah. Spellcasters.
The other thing too, though, is if you get people who like generally play spellcasters and then they have like a melee class or something, they'll still be like, 1 second. And they'll like look over their character sheet and it's like, you have a broadsword. You
have a stick.
You don't have too many options to pick from. Yeah.
Hit it with a stick. I enjoy when there's like so many like bonus actions and like stuff you can kind of passively do, and trying to decide when it's worthwhile and when it's not to utilize like a daily ability that you have like once per long rest or short rest. And it's like, is this when I use this? And that's part of the thing that I think is important to leveling up versus like jumping into a high level character, is that you kind of get the feel for the character and you kind of get the feel for like, when would they use their abilities?
Yeah. That's another thing about 5e that really like started to grind my gears is sitting down at tables with people, and within like the first 15 minutes of play, they would have burned like 3 spell slots and use their daily ability. And then once they run out, they're like, well, we need to rest now. And it's like, we've
Yeah.
barely gotten through a part of this campaign, and just because you overburned, now we need to like break the meta narrative of what's happening here, because like
Yeah.
you don't know how to control your like ration out your abilities. And so in some games I'm like, we're gonna do where a short rest is you actually like get to a town and are able to like get in like a couple days of like recovery and recuperation, because it's people just like want to play the power fantasy. And while that's fun and there are games and tables where you can for sure do that, when I'm playing like a long form game, I like to see the skill of like how we ration these things out and how we use our abilities.
Yeah, I like the downtime. I find a lot of DMs don't take advantage of that, or a lot of players don't take advantage of that to say like, "Hey, listen, my character is exhausted." And like I feel like using the exhaustion rules, even though you've been on the road for a month. You've
Yeah.
been fighting and dungeon delving for a month. You're fucking tired, dude. And so even though
Yeah,
you're
Mark.
sleeping, you're taking those points of exhaustion.
Mark in our in the beginning of Cat Sty, the against the demon lords, he just adopted the thing where it's like, if you go down in combat and you get risen back up, you're up, but you have a level of exhaustion. And if it happens again, you have 2 levels of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Just because, yeah, we want things to feel exciting and fun, and we want to like encourage active players, but also like this, it has to feel dangerous at the same time, because that's
Right.
excitement is like not knowing you'll succeed at all times, but that little sliver of like, this person's life is on the line. When we played in Spontaneum, you were obliterated.
Oh yeah, I got hit by so much. I pulled so much aggro just by being a sassy bitch. I pissed
Yeah.
that man off so much and was like, "I am a threat.
And my
Fear
character
me."
was like so different than yours, but we kind of had like a little buddy
Oh, it
buddy thing
worked
going on.
so well.
And my character was also a pacifist, so I hadn't cast any spells or done anything aggressive towards this wizard. But as soon as you went down, I was like, that's my job. And I just rushed completely into the fray of battle and like covered you up and resurrected you.
Yeah, it was perfect.
And it's, yeah, and it's, I would rather at this point, I've played too many warlocks who just like blow everything up. I've played too many guys who just like, it's like a mildly drunk druid who really doesn't know what's going on.
Yep.
And now I'm just like, I want to play helpful characters. I want to play like, in a stream I do with my buddy Sevi, and Battles from Casti, we're doing Beyond the Witchlight. And the thing that really excites me about that module is that you can play through the entire thing without getting into one combat if you want to.
Yeah.
And so I looked at a bunch of homebrews and I was like, Sevi, is it cool if I make like a homebrew warlock who's like more of a support class?
Yep.
And he was like, yeah. And so like my patron is this kind of like good times loving fae who hasn't been back to the Feywild in a long time, but I am their avatar as they are about to ascend to minor godhood.
Oh, very
But
cool.
all they care about is like making a space better than it was before. They believe in like there is inherent good in most people, and you just need to be able to like find the ways to bring it out. And I'm playing a pacifist warlock.
Awesome. Murphy's on the edge of being a pacifist. Murphy isn't actually, he's a goblin. So he's like, I'm kind of an asshole, and I'm kind of selfish, but also, like, he doesn't actually cast. If you notice, Murphy didn't do any damage that game either. Maybe like one thunderclap. I think that was it.
Right.
So all of the spells were like plant growth, power word stun, charming,
that power word stun was a game changer,
right? And so like there's a whole ton of like, he has almost no damage spells in his spell list. You saw the spell list, right?
Yeah, I think it's
Counterspell was the other
you'll
one.
start playing, and people will look at your spell list and they'll be like, oh, there's a ton more valuable spells than that. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure there are, but this one is valuable because I it connects to my character, it connects to the lore that I've put in for my character, and it also has fun roleplay implications as well.
Well, I gave him thaumaturgy. So I
Yeah.
was like, because he's a bard, and I was like, I feel like Murphy is the kind of person that if he wants to yell to be heard, he will magically make that happen. And the only way to get thaumaturgy and not be a cleric is to be a 10th level bard. Which is
You get
why
to pick
Gandalf is a
whatever
bard, by
spells
the
you want.
way.
And you are you watching Rings of Power or no?
Not yet. No, I've been trying to keep up with Critical Role Campaign 3, and
Oh, okay.
that eats up the majority of my free time right now.
It's a lot of content, yeah.
I fell off of campaign
Um
2 because I thought there were too many I struggled with it with there was too much chaos and not enough group cohesion. I kept
yeah.
running into this thing of like, why are these people together? I don't understand.
I with Critical Role especially, I'll like jump in for like an arc and I'll be like, "Oh, this is very cool." And then something will happen. I'm just like, I don't really care about this much anymore. And then I'll come back for like the next season. So like I saw
Yeah.
I think very close to the end of the second season where they're trapped on that island.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a good amount of the first season, and then third season I watched the first one and I was like, I don't know if I'm really into the setting of these characters. So I'm a
Yeah.
Dimension 20 boy. I heard.
Yeah, yes. I've been slowly trying to catch up and rewatch from the beginning, and I absolutely loved the character introductions of the high school.
Yeah, I
I
think
was like,
that's
this is
such a
amazing.
it's such like a beautiful way to really like make these characters feel individual, give them their own space so that they feel comfortable. If they're like, oh, I just want to go off on my own and like look at the stars for a moment, it's like, yeah, we totally have the like tools in place to give people individual scenes and that kind of thing.
Yes.
And then when they come together, you really feel like, oh, they're coming together for a reason, and
It
all
makes
these
sense
people are
why they're
such,
together.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm noticing that
Um,
with campaign 3, it's better so far than campaign 2 when it came to why are these people together? Campaign 2 was like too much chaos, and like
yeah,
everybody felt like they were bringing chaos to the table. And I mean, the individual characters, like as standalones, I like them in a bubble, but like all together, I'm like this doesn't I don't understand what I'm watching. But I don't know, with a new crew, I'm like they balance each other pretty well so far, and like they kind of hooked a couple of them up and are like, okay, no, these two characters are together, these two characters are together, these two characters are together. And they tried to do that, but I think Molly Mock dying early on in campaign 2 kind of fucked with their dynamic in a way that
right.
Caduceus, although is a great character, wasn't able to take the same position in the group, and they didn't really fit quite right, which is
Restructure,
fine.
yeah.
Which is fine. It's difficult for a show. It's fine for a table because I mean I've struggled with that with my characters being like, why is my character here? Like this doesn't make any sense. And I've straight up had characters just leave. I'm like, my character leaves. My character has no reason to be here, no reason to put themselves at risk with the way these people behave, and like doesn't agree with the where the group is going and what they're strong enough that they can just there's nothing existential threat that's keeping this character being like, no, I have to stay in a group, otherwise I'm gonna die.
So yeah, I think that's a very interesting little thing that you've introduced here, because the question is like at a table that is private, that's a home game, versus at a table that we are presenting to an audience.
Yes.
I think it's like team cohesion works in different ways. It's like, I think for a presentation, we have been asked to be at the table. We're asked to like sit down with the DM, and hopefully there's like trust and love and excitement around everybody, and we trust our DM to like take us on a good ride. Um, but it is also up to us as players to look at what is presented in front of us
Mm-hmm.
if we are asked to be in this presentation, and say like, what is important to me, what is keeping me here.
Yep.
And if there's not anything, then have a conversation with your DM outside and say like, I don't really feel like my character is connected to this story, and then they can, restructure for those moments.
Yeah, or switch your
And that
character
works
out,
in,
right?
yeah, switch your character out. Retire the character. That's a totally fine thing to do.
Retire the character and maybe
Um,
bring them back later when there's something that's more aligned with whatever it is that they're doing in the background.
yeah, and though I think it's people just don't want to have these conversations sometimes.
Sure.
It's hard to be upfront with a lot of things. Even just if you get like the wrong cheeseburger at a McDonald's, a lot of people are like, it's fine, it's fine. It's like, yeah, it is fine. Go just tell them that that's not how you like it. And like in the Demon Lords, against the Demon Lords, the first show on Cast Die, we were very different characters that had all kind of come together for one reason. And at a certain point, my character, Prime, was like, this is all on me. So much of what's happening right now is like my destiny to take care of. And it's my hunt. And none of you are supposed to be here. And none of you are supposed to be like interfering between me and my hunt. And when we're in a combat situation and I see that like one of you is in peril, like that distracts me from what I'm supposed to be doing. And so like, I need to get the fuck out of here. And you should not come with me. Yep. And it was this whole episode where I'm like arguing with them. And then I'm like, I get away.
I mean,
and they
started chasing you.
Yeah, they started chasing after me.
That's
and
amazing.
Then there was a combat set up down the road, like an ambush. And as I ride right through it, because I'm just like going no stop, and they're like coming after me, and they get ambushed. And then all of a sudden, I have to turn my horse around and go back to help them because I actually care about them at this point. And one of our characters dies in that combat.
Oh no.
And I was like, this is why I said, just let me go. And it's very cool for like inner player conflict, especially in a presentation, is like, have the DM bring you back in, have them give you that thing that's like, I can't run away from this. He knows that I care about these people. He's going to give me the motivation to come back. But it's exciting when I fight those motivations, or when I fight with other players, characters at the table, not with players. Because we're not all fully aligned in our thought. And
right. And it's great to have group cohesion, because there's a difference between player to player and character to character and player to character. I cannot like someone's character. Like as a player, I can be like, I don't like that character, but my character might like that character.
For sure.
Or like my character might not like that character, but I love the player. I was like, no, you're great. I love you. But my character thinks you're a dumb piece of shit.
Yeah, and when we argue with each other as characters at the table, it's some of the funniest moments. And sometimes like we start arguing in the middle of a dungeon and it like sets off a trap and stuff. And then it's like, that's fun. That's exciting.
Now everyone knows we're here. Good job, asshole.
Yeah. Because it's either like, especially in presentation of play, in actual plays, it's like you either have like your Bill and Ted, where it's just like a whole party that are like, yeah, let's do this thing, this is gonna be crazy awesome, and everybody's just like, I love how you do it, or you can have like any other narrative where it's like people who like kind of annoy each other sometimes and make mistakes together.
I like the family
storytelling
trope. That the group ends up becoming a family, and so they're like this weird mashed together group of people who love each other, but like also like, I hate living with you. But like they're so cohesive when it comes to whatever it is that group does. Like, what is their job? What do they do as a group? Because I think that's another thing to sort of for the DM to think about when it comes to motivating players and characters. What is this group's shtick? Like, what do they do? What do they do here? Are they monster hunters? Are they like guild members? Are they trying to open a guild? Do they want to run a shop? Like, what do they do? Do they work for the king?
I think that's like a big thing as a DM is we talked about like prep and how much you do and everything. And I think it's like, it all depends on what you want to get out of the game. But I think one of the most important things that you can prep is kind of just like a theme, is thinking like, what is the arc of this moment that they're playing through right now. Like, when did the chapter start, and how long do I think until it ends based on their current actions? And that's something that you can kind of just like slightly modify at every point. But if you're saying like the theme right now is monster hunting, or like the theme right now is like mystery and discovering,
yeah,
and then you at least know like the mood to like set things in, the ways you can react to your players. But if you're like, all right, they're going to slay this gold dragon, you literally can't make them do that, and you never will.
Yeah.
But if the theme is like dragons, then it's like, are they going to slay the dragon? Are they going to learn about dragons? Are they going to, discover a cult of dragons? Yeah, for sure.
I like to, a lot of my prep is just like the way I personally prep is the world. And then like a handful of things that they are going to run into. And then depending on how they behave with those things that they run into will change the dynamic necessarily what's going on. But because there's overarching things that are way over their heads going on, it doesn't inherently change what's happening over here. So because it doesn't change what's happening over here, it means that even though they've handled this thing this way, that next problem is still going to be something that they're gonna run into. And it's not, what they're doing is going to be generally reactive, not preventative. Unless you're building a
100%,
preventative,
because like
you could do that. Prevent the apocalypse.
Yeah. If your campaign is like, they start off in like a secret bunker and they're like, the king is making a move right now, but the linchpin is that this small force is moving in. It's like, then you will have implications in grand global scale shit. That's the theme of what's happening right now.
Right.
But,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially for starting characters and starter campaigns and players. It's like, let's start with a town event, and the world is still functioning around them. But this is the world that they see right now.
Start getting hints, weirdness of what is this? And you start finding like little things, and then those little things start adding up. And then suddenly something from way back then starts making sense of like oh no.
Yeah. This was that thing I saw in the woods, and the DM he was like, you can't have no idea what it is, but it's a glowing purple, like, wow, wow, wow. And then it disappears.
Yep.
And you're like, what was that? You thought it was really important at the time, but it's more important 8 months later.
Yeah. And then, I mean, when you're playing a big long form campaign, it is literally months later. I don't know. I've been playing
the Final Fantasy games since almost the beginning of lockdown, and they haven't even left Midgar yet. So.
Oh my god, that's so cool. That's so cool. I want to do this now. Fuck. That's so cool.
It's pretty good.
So cool.
Because you really like looking at those characters, you really can like build something and be like, yeah, Tifa's a monk and she has mobile as a feat already from the beginning. And then, speaking to like moments where you like do levels up for your character in classic Final Fantasy and RPG trope, there was like a gym in the sector, and they went and they paid money and they trained with these different trainers, and each trainer had like a list of like either skill upgrades or feats that they could choose from.
That's so cool.
And then we described like how that day at the gym went and all sorts of stuff.
Fucking love it. I fucking love that so much. The story of Final Fantasy VII is so intricate and so interesting, even in like the character motivations and the interplay. And like I did a whole stream talking about fucking the waifu wars and Tifa and Eris, because that came out. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Eris is a shitty person. That's not a bad thing. It's great writing, but the subterfuge of her class of basically being like the healer, innocent young girl, and her behavior and like how manipulative what she says and does is hilarious and how like aggressive she is when she like talks and how she behaves. And then you counter it with looking at Tifa as the brawler fighter who's going to suplex a train, being like the most maternal mom of the group. It's like, this is brilliant. I love
That's what you think. It's like your own mind kind of rewriting things, because when you think about Aerith, you think of like the demure flower girl, and she's she's a firecracker, and
She
Tifa is like
is.
the very sweet. Yeah.
It's
um
amazing. The
one of the things
subterfuge.
in Yeah, one of the things in the campaign. First off, I'm glad you mentioned Tifa and suplexing a train, because I put a Doom train encounter into the campaign. This is
The
like the thing
Doom
they're dealing with
Train.
right now.
Yes.
Yeah, as they're leaving the train graveyard, Doom train gets summoned. I don't want to get into a whole thing about it, but I was like, if um my guy playing Tifa, I was like, if they try to grapple the train, they will be able to do it. Like, that's the one secret, to either use like a Phoenix Down or like a life spell on it,
Yep.
or if our monk chooses to suplex the train, that will be like an instant victory as well. And
Yes.
the motherfucker didn't put it together.
Ooh.
I know.
Oh, that's so sad. That's so sad.
But to
I
speak to character
love that shit.
dynamics too, is like just Final Fantasy VII. It's like the character
Mm.
dynamics that exist on the first bombing run of like the Mako reactor
Yep.
are changed and they've evolved, but they are essentially still the same at the end of the game. Like Barrett is still yelling at Cloud and saying like, you fucking young punk kid. But if you've gone to secret interactions at like the Gold Saucer, or if you've done all these
Yep.
things, you get to see that like, oh no, there's so much deeper that's happening.
He's saying that,
within
but
these
that
dynamics.
means more than what you probably initially thought it meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love shit like that. One of my characters is a Warforged. And she's creepy as hell. And this is the fun thing about the two characters that go together, right? So it's this Warforged, and the other character is an Eladrin. And
Okay.
one is a monk warlock, and the Warforged is a swashbuckler ranger. And the fun thing about it is the swashbuckler rogue is a very charisma based line
Yeah.
of where your abilities need to be. And that's the robot. The robot is like the most charismatic fucking and this robot's like 7'2", gangly, no facial expressions. I gave it the cloak of Arachnida so it can climb around on the roof, like on the ceiling of the ship, to do like repairs and
Very
stuff.
creepy.
Very creepy. Turns its head all the way around. It has got like dust of coughing and smoking and like patches that pop out and shit like that. And then I gave it a belt of dwarven or giant strength because I thought it was funny. The
one of the best items.
Right? The monk is a drunk monk who's the captain of the ship, who's like, she's very pretty. She's like thin and lithe and very like classically good looking. She's got like the noble background. She's an asshole. She's just a belligerent.
Yeah, have you ever talked to a noble?
Yeah, exactly. She's just a belligerent. I'm smarter than you are. I know better than you. I've been around a lot longer than you have. She's not xenophobic in the way that a lot of like the Eladrin are like, no, we're better than everybody. But but it's more of like a self arrogance of like, I don't think Eladrin are better than everybody. I'm just better than everybody else.
Yeah,
you're right. And she's like very much like, but she's, because I had to offset her because her charisma is not that high. She's a dexterous wisdom character. She's got a little bit of charisma, but most of her charisma stuff is like the secondary warlock stuff, which I just gave her rituals but casting. So she has a lot of information. She knows a lot of things. She's basically, her motivations once upon a time when she first started adventuring was to basically make a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like, that was what she wanted to do. She wanted to go around and visit every place and make notes on every place of, you got to go here for dinner and all that shit.
That's funny.
Talk to this guy. And so they're very much like, who's the one who really gets the jobs? It's like the robot who just is very like neutral toned, like, but also very intimidating, but also very persuasive. Yeah. So
I guess it depends on what job it is, you know?
Exactly. The character's name is 13, and it's like 13 is the one that makes shit happen. Anna is the one that is like the motivator, right?
You've picked two very. It sounds like you like battlefield mobility.
So I originally made both of these characters in 4th edition. And
Oh,
one
okay.
of them's the monk in 4th edition was all about go fast and hit lots of things and very control based. So I tried to sort of recreate that with the monk warlock. So I gave her ritual. She's got ritual casting. So she's a pact of the tome. She's got like the runic eyes or whatever it was called. So she can basically like read and speak any language, including magical languages. I wanted to give her like very much I am collecting knowledge and I am writing these books about like you want to go to the elemental plane of fire, boom, here's a book on the elemental plane of fire. You want this, boom, here's a
Right.
book on this. But she's also not very intelligent. So like things will be called like, oh hey, yeah, put this thing into that other thing and it'll do this thing. But it doesn't actually say words. It doesn't tell you what the thing is. And so I wanted to make her
Directions on how to get somewhere, like walk until the sand starts to get a little more
right, but that works in the astral, see? Go until you feel like you probably should stop. And
yeah,
you might be there.
the vibes just aren't great.
Yeah, and so I made her go fast, and that was the motivation behind that. That was the build, and she's running from things, so it's thematic. She spends a lot of time running. She's a smuggler, and a messenger, so she's like a Hermes-esque smuggler.
Yeah.
There's a whole other thing. I'll tell you about it after. But
All right. But then you have the swashbuckling rogue, and
yes,
they are just hit back up, which also is.
I made them both sort of very much able to deal with any situation. 13 is very much about I've analyzed the situation and this is the best course of action to take out of these lists of actions that I can take. As a ranger swashbuckler, you get like the bonus actions, you get the reaction. I gave her sentinel. Like she's like, I will make these decisions and I will pick the best one to use my reaction. And I want to be able to take as many hits as possible so I can get as many sneak attacks as possible, because Anna's not a DPS. Anna's control. So Anna is like, hey, 13, go over there. Pff, slaps her across the head, and 13 teleports that far over there. Whereas Anna is all about bopping around combat and making sure it's as advantageous to them as possible. And 13's out there just being like, damage.
Can I ask your advice?
Yeah.
All right, here
I'd
we
be
go.
honored.
So I'm going to be playing a new private game. We're starting soon. I probably have no time for it, but it was too good of an offer to pass up.
Fair.
And we kind of were given like free range. We're all just kind of like creating this world and this reality together. So, DM was like, write in as much of a backstory as you want, and those things will be like real in the world,
Nice.
And so I'm a Haragon from a warren of rabbit folk who are like traditionally they become very adept spellcasters, and people say it's because like the original like founder of this warren like made a pact with a fae being or something. And my thing is that like at some point I was adopted by a like warcaster college that was disbanded by the government years ago, and so it's like now secret underground warcasters who like are still fighting for what they believe to be right. And so he's just this like 3-foot tall rabbit warcaster wizard, and right now with Harengon and just what I've given him as far as dexterity, he has a +10 to his initiative at level 1.
Nice.
Because of it'll be at level 2. He'll have a +10. Because of the Warcaster feat where you add your like intelligence modifier to your initiative as well.
Alert feat incoming.
So then, yeah. I was thinking he's allowing us all to take a feat at first level as well, just a free feat.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking that if I took alert, I could have a +15 to my initiative
yes,
at second level.
Yep.
And that's just like, I feel like it is in character because he's the kind of character that's like always analyzing every situation before
always ready
they
for
even
combat.
get into
Got
it.
a chip on his shoulder.
Always ready to go. Yeah. And he just doesn't want to ever get caught in a situation that he either can't take control of or get out of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But a plus 10 is already pretty good for that.
I mean, you can always save it for later.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
do you have a direction you want do you want the character's direction to sort of be like he learns to relax and like learns to maybe just let things happen sometimes, or do you think he's going to go the other way and get like hyper like
I think I'm gonna see like what my interaction is with the other characters at the table as well, and see if they have things to teach me before I really determine like what that arc is gonna or how I want to play that arc. But the
Yeah.
one thing is that like he is things that just need to be healed in him is like he watched his whole warren get destroyed with like dark magic and fire, and so he doesn't like
Yikes.
to be in enclosed spaces that he can't control, and
Yeah.
he's deathly afraid of fire that is like not in a lantern or whatever.
Alert would be a good feat. Even just the alarm spell
Yeah,
would be like a for sure this guy's got sorry, I'm rolling over something. I think it's one of my cords. The alert the alarm spell ought to probably be like one of his like standard go-tos, like a
standards.
ritual that he does every night where he casts this spell before doing anything else. Um Dipping into
I was thinking of
divination might be interesting.
that would be very fun.
Yeah, you can check out like being able to. I don't know if you want to do a full on like dip into divination wizard specifically, but going
Right.
and leaning into divination spells between like, oh, I can like scry this area and I can kind of look at things from a distance, so I don't necessarily need to rely on a scout per se, or going into the like the stealthier option of taking things like pass without a trace to avoid like if your character's
He's
gonna be
definitely
there.
a subterfuge kind of dude.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
then as my feat, like I can either create like a little more to his backstory and give him like telepathic, or
Yeah.
I can I don't think war like mage slayer, even though I kind of want him to be a
Mage
mage
Slayer
slayer,
would
but
be
I have no like
fun.
melee abilities.
What about
Mobile's always
Elemental
good too.
Adept?
Ooh, that's fun.
Because that could give you like a little bit of an excuse as to why your character was able to survive this fire shit. Or maybe he was
Mm.
branded a little bit by whatever came
Yeah,
through.
he does have a lot of markings on his body.
Hmm.
So
You could
yeah. All
go,
right. This is
yeah, you got lots of options. I mean, the mobile feat's always a nice feat, but
yeah, just 10 extra feet of movement. Why not?
there's I'm trying to think because there's so many. Um, there's one. I mean, Sentinel is nice and a
Yeah,
standard.
my biggest problem is that I would need two feats. I would need like the Warcaster and Sentinel, because then I could like use my reactions as
Yeah,
casting ability.
yeah.
So maybe Warcaster is a nice one.
Warcaster's a nice one. Yeah. I mean, you can always pick up one later. You're only level 2, right? So or level 3.
I'm gonna be level 1. I literally, when they were like, let's start this campaign. Does anybody have any requests? And I was like, can we just at least be like 3 or beyond before
Ah,
we start?
yeah.
And they're like, all
No.
right, level 1, guys.
Yeah. I mean, if you're getting to start with 2 feet, that's still pretty good. So you got
Yeah.
some space to wiggle. You could also do like an armor if you want like a if your character's like paranoid and is worried that he's
That's a
like
pretty
gonna
good
get it.
idea too.
Yeah, if you worry he's gonna get
As like a
attacked.
light armor.
Yeah. I feel like there was another one that's like a oh, what's it called? I'm pretty sure there's one that gives you like knowledge on an enemy.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? Like it's similar to like
Yeah.
the fighter or similar to the ranger's favored enemy, but it's not that. It's something along those lines though. That might be up your alley depending on if you know what was attacking you versus what doesn't attack you versus like
The
the
Eldritch
additional sense.
Invocations is also something too, because it's like I could do like see in magical darkness, or I could do comprehend languages essentially.
Yeah, seeing in magical
Those are always
darkness is
fun.
nice if you're going to be casting it as well.
Yeah,
Um, if you're gonna go the route of like the Eldritch Blast cannon, you could always do that. It's always fun.
I know.
A
I just
classic.
turn a wizard into an Eldritch Blast Cannon.
You could.
It's something that I'm trying to get away from just playing Warlocks. It's like I don't want to
Are you
just be
gonna
casting
well, have you
Eldritch
picked your
Blast all the
pact? It'd be a blade pact.
time. In for my Warlock,
Yeah.
no. So I said I was doing a bunch of like homebrewing for the Warlock. So he's his patron is essentially called the Hope Weaver, which gives him like
Oh.
bless and healing spells and stuff.
Yep.
And then I am also looking at making my own pact. That's like Pact of the Halo, and it does kind of like paladin like auras
Nice.
and stuff like that.
Are you trying to
Yeah.
be helpful? Is this the helpful character you're working on?
Yes, he's just the guy who's like he was like a young kid who was raised in a cult that was getting him ready to be the avatar of this being so it could ascend to godhood. And so essentially he's been like on his own and learning at this like very weird little school for a
Taking
long time.
something close to like the tome pact for whatever it is that you're gonna tweak. If you grab
Yeah.
yourself like ritual casting and grab yourself, because I mean that's a feat as well if you want ritual casting, but I think the warlocks get it anyway. If you take the pack of the tome, you get like access to a lot of additional spells, which will definitely allow you to boost your utility. And so
Luckily, just talking with the DM too, I've been like, is it okay if I take this like on my spell list, or if I just because of my patron like grab from divine spell list
yeah,
or
the divine
whatever?
yeah. Um,
And so they've
I
been
would
very
I would
helpful.
dip into divination magic if I were you, just because like just from what you're describing, the
It's this,
character would
yeah,
match. And like it doesn't again, you don't
I
have to
love it.
necessarily dip into wizard. Just take like look at the divination spells and be like, "Whoa, what's good here? Oh, I can locate any of the people I feel like I want to locate at any given point in time. Great."
If you do dip into divination wizard, though, you get those dice,
Yep.
and that's very nice.
Those things are spicy. The
Yeah,
failures basically impose a fail or a success on something.
it's pretty good. Pretty good.
What are those things called? Portents.
They
The
portents.
brains. All right, we should start looking to wrap up. We've been live for almost 2 hours.
Yeah, I'm exhausted.
So
I
last
literally dropped a can of soda on my toe before we started.
oh
I've been in pain. I've been over this since it began. So let's wrap it up.
all right, fine. Last question. Favorite use of a spell? It doesn't have to be by you. It's just you've seen
Yeah.
somebody do something creative or crazy with a spell and you're like, that's amazing. Tell me a story.
This is the hardest question, and you prepared me for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this is a broad, general cop-out answer. But I think that some of my favorite uses of spells to go along with the theme of what I've been talking about today are when a character in the party like kills an enemy, and then somebody else goes like, that is not, my character would not allow this to happen. And so they use spare the dying or a healing spell on the enemy so that they're playing their character more truthfully than just trying to win the game.
Counterspelling your own friend's spells.
Power would kill ya or something.
Power kill. Counterspell.
Yeah,
somebody
because it's
burns
like,
a level 9 spell and some asshole in the party counterspells you.
Because it's like let's put on the skin. Let's like try out what it feels like to make decisions that we normally wouldn't in our lives. Of course, we can play the character that's like very much like us and just wants to like come in and have fun. But I am an actor, and I want to watch people make choices that I normally wouldn't expect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I love challenge. It's cool. I
I
think it's
played
very
in a
cool.
game with some players that were pseudo new-ish, and I got to bring Anna, and we were low level, and so I got to play the monk, and this was still when fifth edition was relatively new, and they played a must have been right near when Xanathars came out because one of them was playing a mastermind rogue and the other one was playing a bard. And my character's history means she knows what a bard is and knows what a bard can do. So my character kept
Right.
teasing this bard character, being like, hey, wouldn't it be helpful if you inspired one of us? Because she never used her inspiration. And then I did something in the other, because the other two people weren't paying attention in game and out of game. And so I talked to the DM. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this. And he was like, yeah, okay. So I did this thing, and it was basically like seeing if I could get the attention of a giant that may or may not have been in the area. But I looked at the area, and I'm like, I don't think there's a giant here. So I made a bunch of noise, and the other two were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I want to see if a giant shows up. And they're like, we would die. And I'm like, I wouldn't die. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm really fast. And they decided they wanted to
Yeah.
try to fight me. And so we like out of game, I went, okay, so if you guys want to do this, this is fine. I don't have a problem if you guys want to attack my character. But let's like kind of meta game talk about it first. Because I don't think this is gonna go the way you think this is going to go. Because I am an elf, so I have long range, I can teleport, I have stunning strike, I can attack both of you at the same time because I have Fury of Blows, I have more hit points than you. And it's just like, you understand that you do not win this fight assuming you can catch me or get close enough to even hit me to begin with, right?
Yeah.
And so they didn't end up doing it, which is too bad. But it ended up being like a fun little conversation of like how bonkers the monk is at low level. And like the monk kind of falls off a little bit if you don't, because they don't really have any good magic items that go with them, and they don't really have like some of the stuff that they get is sort of like more meta gamey, like, oh, you stop aging, and it's like, oh, I mean, great. Like Timeless Body is like does nothing for me from a combat or from like a non-combat encounter situation. It's like, oh great, my character still ages but stops looking any older. So that's kind of,
and especially when you're playing in games where it's like, oh, we don't really talk about food or like any of that stuff. It's like, so this entire level is essentially just a HP increase, you know?
Right, exactly. And so I mean, I kind of like mess with some things just to make my characters still more valuable by saying, well, I mean, from a utility standpoint, my character is so, although I'm not a DPS and I no longer do what my character did at first level, they just take on a different position and job in the group and the party. The monks just aren't DPS characters. They just come off like that right at the beginning. I think that tricks some people. But I don't know. It ended up being really ridiculous just because like two other players cannot touch me. And it's like, you just don't have what you need. Sorry.
Yeah, literally just based on your movement, I could always get away from you. I could do a strike and then disengage and then run backwards. And then, you know.
And on top of that, I had longbow training because I'm an elf. So I have a bow.
So you're never going to touch me.
You're never going to touch me. You would have to get the drop on me. And you have to get, you have to beat my wisdom saving throw for your master of tactics to give you advantage, meaning you're a rogue that has to beat my wisdom as a monk to get your sneak attack.
Yeah.
Like, you're not gonna get your sneak attack damage. You're not sneaking up on me. You've already announced that you might fight me, so you're not surprising me in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
What? What are you gonna do?
My first character ever. Yeah. You have to get through all of it. My first character ever was a monk, and I love monks. But he was one of the worst monks, elemental monk.
Yep.
And but we were playing through Cult of the Dragon Queen, and there's a point where you are on like a mountaintop, and this was 10 years ago at this point. And you have to like fight this champion to prove yourself.
Yep.
And I was like, I'll do it. And I very quickly realized that he only had 30 feet of movement and I had like 40 feet of movement.
Pop,
And I was like, okay,
pop.
pop, run back. And then at the end of the campaign, the DM, or that moment, the campaign was like, yeah, some of the people are like grumbling that it wasn't a fair fight because you just kept running away. And I was like, yeah, but then I also like ran towards, like, I used my abilities as a fighter to beat this guy.
Outmaneuvered
like,
him.
Yeah, I won. So fuck you.
Yeah, what, you want to fight me next? The
Yeah,
stunning
I'll do it
strike,
again.
stunning strike is really strong. Also, like the additional of the drunk monk gets something really fun, where you can, if an attack misses you, you can redirect it to hit something else, and it doesn't specify enemy. It just says creature or whatever. You can just redirect the attack as long as it's within 5 feet of you. So basically, I'm like, even if you two get to either side of me where you're flanking, even if you get there, which you can't really do, and that's assuming you even want to get in melee of me, which is probably not what you want, not where you want to be, to get the sneak attack damage, to potentially get the advantage. If you miss, I can redirect that, and that's going to hit you now. Do you get
That's
sneak
true.
attack dice?
I was
going
to say, like, you're surprised for sure. I was going to say you can redirect towards the tiefling in your party, Hellish Rebuke, right on that.
Yeah, oh, you can do a lot of silly nonsense. And then it's just like, and by the way, if one of you decides to pull out a bow, I can catch it and throw it back at you. Like, you understand that there is literally nothing you guys can do to fight me right now. Like, you're gonna have to try and catch me while I'm sleeping. Oh, wait, I am an elf.
This is when John Taffer, or your version of John Taffer, comes in and is like, "You're being a bully."
I mean, a little bit, but they wanted to fight me.
Cultivate.
This was one of those times where my character was like, I am literally only hanging out with these newbie adventurers because I took a job from the king and he told me to work with them. And they've been nothing but a detriment since I got here. So my character basically used them. Yep.
When your like meta narrative stacks on top of the narrative of your character, where you're like, you guys don't know how to play this fucking game. And I am now, as a player, becoming a bit annoyed because you've had 2 months. So
read your character sheet.
Yeah. It's I'm kind of I have low patience, and in some regards, never as a DM, but as a player at a table, one of the things I know about like this isn't a game for me is like if people are like constantly on their phones while we're playing, and then when it's like, okay, what do you want to do? And they're like, what? So what just happened? I'm like, I don't need to be at this table.
Yeah.
I like a pretty quick, fast-paced game with people who are like excited to play. And if you like still haven't learned your thing, once again, I say I am an actor. I learn shit, especially words, like so quickly. And so like when people are talking about rules, I'm just one of those people who I'm like, no, I think that grapple is athletics, or and I'll just like, I can be a rules lawyer if you want me to. But I don't a little care about a lot of it.
Mostly because I'm trying to be helpful, not because I'm trying to say that you can or cannot do this. I'm saying I'm pretty sure this is the way it's supposed to function, but that's just for your knowledge. You do whatever you want with that. You don't use it, throw it out. I don't care. I do find that
when people roll dice and
go ahead.
I was just gonna say when people roll dice and they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, that's the 900th time you've looked at your modifier for attack. Why isn't it just in your brain right now?
Yeah, why don't you have
7 for the last 6 years.
You need a cheat sheet for your character sheet at this point.
Which is crazy because it literally is just like write the modifier. It's one number. Put it right there.
I think it's really interesting because people I think rely a lot on the DM to create immersion and create interest. But like as a player, one of the best things you can do is be invested. Like go out of your way to try to be invested because the DM's got a lot of work to do with a lot of people. If all the players are trying and want to be invested, that will help so much with immersion of everybody else at the table and help the DM in such a way that it will make you their favorite player.
Find the reason to be there. And it's like, one of the best things about like creating backstory is it gives the DM things to like bring in that allow you to, be engaged as a character and as a player. But one of the good things about writing a backstory that isn't really specific is that at any moment you can go like, that guy's my rival. And
Yeah.
as he walks in, I get so angry,
Yeah.
like to have those moments where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. And my character still has room to grow because I can't figure them all out before we've even started playing. I don't know how I'm going to react as a player, but also
Yeah.
like filtered through my character. So let's give enough room for this to change,
give your
or to make split
characters
moment
space
decisions.
You give your character space to breathe.
Yeah.
All right. Tell everybody where to find you and what you're up to, and let's get on out of here.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. My name is Jordan Gwizdowski. Jojo, you can call me. You can find me on Instagram at brutalkind without the underscore that you see below me right now. You can find me DMing and playing on the Cast Die podcast. You can find that on Instagram and also on Twitter. I stream pretty often with Nerdy Enough, where we're playing Wild Beyond the Witchlight. And yeah, I'm going to be on a Spontaneum maybe once again with you. So there's just like a lot of stuff. Check out my show, Everyday Folk. It's what I like to call a holistic approach to D&D, because we're mostly just like all sitting around and vibing.
That's so cool. I can't wait to check that one out. I'm going to add some of the links to the description below, so if you're looking for any of those things, you'll find them down there. We're taking off. Thanks for coming, everybody. I will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.